Hello and welcome to Health Exposure. Today we have an interesting show. As always, what can I possibly tell you? My favorite person is on, and that's Deborah. And without lingering any longer, let's go right to it. And she brought a friend, by the way. Hi, Deborah. How you doing?
Hi, Kurt. I'm great. How are you?
You're always great. I'm afraid to tell you because you say, oh, you're eating good today.
I had a banana before we came on.
Okay,
yes.
Well, good. Well, you brought somebody with you.
This is Barbara. Barbara is one of my clients.
Hi, Barbara. How you doing?
She's great. She's been dealing with diabetes for a couple years now, and the onset of her diabetes started around the age of 2021. So we're going to actually present Barbara as an interesting case study because she's worked very diligently and very methodically in really addressing some of these imbalances, which I think is pretty spectacular, especially for someone in their 20s, because as you know, your lifestyle in your 20s is not indicative of stability. I mean, everyone likes to have a life and to have a life.
Can I take a pause just to remember the 20s? I mean, my 20s.
Sure. Yes,
oh, good.
yes,
I remember the 20s.
Yeah, so
Shame
do
on
I.
you. Oh, my goodness.
But that's just the case in point, Kurt. It's really difficult, you know, when you're young and you're full of life and you're feeling good and your friends are going out and they're partying and, you know, you want to go to a baseball game and have a couple beers to really control things like diabetes or your blood sugar. And Barbara has a compiled problem or situation where she's hypothyroid as well.
I want to thank you for having the courage to come on the show and share with our viewing audience and also with us. So it brings us to the, I guess, the pertinent question or the inevitable question, what is diabetes?
Well, I'm sure many people out there suffer from diabetes. It's a pretty popular condition, but it is the inability of the body to control and regulate sugars. So if you can't do that, then you have a problem whereby the body produces either too much insulin, not enough insulin, and that deregulates throughout the course of your day. And foods certainly have an affect on the ability for the body to regulate sugars. So as you know, or maybe you don't know, Kurt, all foods are converted into sugar called glucose, and then it's then converted into glycogen, which is stored in the muscle or in the liver for future use up to 12 hours after ingesting those foods. And depending on the amount of sugar naturally occurring in foods, your body either produces more insulin or less insulin. So Barbara maybe should give us a little bit of an overview about a bit of your history. When she did come in, she came in with a number of presenting problems, and we'll get into those in a little bit. But energy was the primary problem.
So Barbara's actually a client of yours. Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, before we do that, correct me if I'm wrong. It seems as though more and more younger people are reporting diabetes. Is that, what's the cause of that?
Well, that's a very good point, and the health trend in America today is shifting into this downward spiral where we're seeing younger and younger people in our population here developing diseases that we shouldn't see until we're older, much older actually, including cancers. So basically the problem is a lot of the kids today, especially this age group, you know, in their 20s, we're growing up primarily on fast foods, you know, more processed foods. Kids are drinking coffee at a lot younger age. I mean, I have kids who are 10, 11, 12 years old who are drinking coffee with sugar as their primary ingredient, or sodas with caffeine, which also deregulates insulin. They're eating absolutely no fiber in their diet, primarily dead foods that are processed, low protein, high carbohydrate, again processed carbohydrates. They're missing minerals which help to regulate and balance insulin production, and they're actually skipping meals. So if you're doing nothing but that as a mainstay, you're looking at this poor little system that's like up and down like a roller coaster all day long. Insulin up, insulin up, and pretty soon you just become fatigued and the pancreas can't regulate insulin production any longer. So that's what happens basically when you don't really address your diet. And it's not that people don't know. You know, I mean, it's not that people know how to change it. They don't, because kids are latchkey kids. They're coming home. There's one parent home at night, and you know, you take whatever's in the freezer. You know, these kids grab whatever's available, and it's usually a snack item. You know, who grabs an apple? Not very many kids. You know, not many kids are going to grab a piece of fruit or a carrot stick. Or
of course, my kids did. They used to throw it at each other. I don't know what you mean, to eat it or
food fight.
Okay.
Good food fight stuff. Bing.
Barbara, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Kurt?
Pretty good. A little nervous?
A little.
Don't be. Just think that there are thousands of people out there interested in learning your story. And you know, it's a wonderful thing because they get to learn firsthand up close that there's something that could be done about a problem that exists in this country. So I'm very, very pleased for you to come over. Why don't you tell us, first of all, how old you are?
I'm 24 years old. I developed diabetes when I was, I think, 21 years old. And I have a history of, my father was diabetic. He was diagnosed when he was 45. And that kind of gave me some background into some of the symptoms that I had been, the symptoms I had recognized as being probably leading into diabetes. And so I kind of caught that just dealing with my father.
Now, prior to going to nutrition consultants, what were some of the things you noticed, and what have you noticed since you have been under the auspices or help of Deborah over here?
Prior to seeing Deborah, my eating habits, which I thought were okay, were, you know, when I later found out, really weren't. I was on a high carbohydrate diet, low protein, relatively low fat diet. And for someone who's diabetic, it's hard to digest all those carbohydrates. So I was feeling really lethargic and fatigued, not a lot of energy, and my mood swings were really unstable. And that was just basically what I was experiencing. I just was never feeling balanced and happy.
I see.
And maintaining a happy, you know, cheerful, like bubbly attitude that I once used to.
Also, if I could just interject real quickly, I believe, Barbara, you came in and at one point you had been really, really, really thin a few years back, right? And then she had seen a dietitian at the hospital, and she had put her on, I think it was, you said 70 grams of carbohydrates at each meal,
Right.
which is 210 plus grams of carbohydrate a day. And what we did is we shifted that and brought her down by almost 50% in the carbohydrate department and moved her into live carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables that contain fiber. But again, the problem is that she also experienced constipation when she came in, along with that low energy. And she had a body fat that was in the normals. I mean, her body fat, she's nice and lean, but she'd like to have been leaner. So we took her body fat down from 28.7% to 23.4%. And she doesn't have a consistent exercise agenda. It's, her lifestyle is very busy. She works, she goes to school, she has a life. So she works out 2 to 3 days a week, which isn't a fat-burning exercise agenda. But she's managed with dietary changes to bring body fat down by over 4%. So that's really quite impressive. And of course, as you know, if there's less body fat, there's more of a chance to regulate insulin. So.
Oh, I see. Well, that's something I didn't know. So, knowing that you have this, and I must have been at a very young age of 21 to get that kind of information where you have something that I guess is classified as a disease, or okay, and realizing that you needed help. How did you get the realization of this, maintain a life, or having a life, and just press on knowing that you would have to use a regulatory food program of some kind? What gave you the courage or the consistency or the strength?
Well, really after I was diagnosed with the diabetes, it hadn't affected me. I just thought, okay, let's move on, let's make the changes that I need to make. And so I wanted to, you know, not let it stop my life, but move on. And through the process, I moved out of my parents' house and moved here to Chicago, and wanted to establish some sort of independence through my diabetes. And my mother has always been really proactive in preventative medicine. So I had a background in that, but I felt that just my overall wellness, I was not feeling as healthy as I knew I could be. And that's when I just really decided that I needed to take charge and, you know, establish a dietary plan that I could work on for life. And, you know, it's not something that happens overnight. I mean, it's definitely something you have to work on, and it's, you know, a daily process. But
you know, I think that requires a lot of maturity and consistency and commitment. I commend you. That's very impressive.
Oh,
that really is. Deborah, what sort of dietary program did you put her on? What kind of changes did you actually bring in that
helped to balance her a little bit? Well, initially, I think you were spiking with your insulin between, you were going down to 40 on your on your readings, and she was popping up over 300. So her blood sugar was just fluxing all over the place, and we found that, again, the high carbohydrates were problematic for her. So, you know, I think a little bit of what is important here is also giving some information about your childhood history, because she ate relatively good as a child, right? I mean, a lot of complex whole grains and maybe not as much protein and not as enough fat and things like that, but or unsaturated oils.
Right.
But still wholesome foods for the most part, because your mom's a pretty good feeder, right? She took
Right.
good
It
care
was
of
probably, I mean, the time that I went away to school that I kind of weaned away from that, because, I mean, growing up, I always wanted the sugar cereals and the potato chips, and that was not in our house at all. So,
you know, that's funny, is when my daughter went off to college, she started eating Captain Crunch every day for breakfast, because we never had it in our home. So did you do that?
do I have to tell the truth?
Yeah. No, you know, it's really good information for people to know what you did eat that kind of made you turn the bend from a glycemic standpoint. So what did you eat in college?
Oh, gosh. Like I said, just...
More fast foods? Or?
What was cafeteria dorm foods? I guess fast foods.
More soda
but just,
pops or coffee?
Well, definitely less fruits and vegetables and the whole grains that I had grown up on, and more saturated fat foods.
Which really deregulates your insulin as well. Saturated fatty acids will do that. Yeah, so if you lose fiber and you do more of the saturated fats, and I don't know if you were ever a coffee drinker, I don't remember.
I wasn't
That's
until
good.
recently.
Which brings me to the question that,
Coffee? What's wrong with coffee?
trust me, we won't get into that one.
Yes, we will. We should.
That goes a few shows back, and I
Coffee
managed.
spikes your insulin. Coffee is just like a big floodgate of insulin.
Absolutely,
It's
that's
just-
something I found out. And Deborah was so kind, she didn't ask me in front of our television audience how much coffee I drank at any given period. I asked the same question you asked. Do I have to tell the truth on this? What is a glycemic index of foods?
Okay, well, we'll come to that. That's a good question,
Okay.
Kurt, and it's important for people to know what the glycemic index is. But real quickly, I don't remember, Barbara, were you exercising when you came in?
I've always
Exercised, right. And what about calories? How many calories were you consuming a day? Because I couldn't find that original log.
1,800 to 2,000.
So you were
I think
eating
so.
plenty, they were just imbalanced calories. So
Right.
what we did is we shifted it. So Kurt, coming back to your last question, what did we do to implement? Well, I started Barbara on food logs, and I meant to bring her chart because I wanted to show our viewing audience how many food logs this girl has filled out. I've kept every log she's ever written. And she started with me in November, and she has done a log every day nearly. I'm sure there's a week or two in there that you haven't done logs, but she has written down what she's done, and she's also tallied her readings, her insulin readings every day, her sugar readings every day.
That's incredible.
Next to the food. So she's,
I mean, it really is.
She's
that's
logged.
incredible.
We found a couple months ago her blood sugar was spiking up to over 300 after breakfast, and I took a look at her food logs, which I could not have done had she not been diligent in doing them. And she was eating rye toast. She was doing her oil, she was doing her egg whites, and she was throwing in a slice of rye toast, I think. And I said, you know what, just for the heck of it, take the rye toast out. Let's see what happens. She took it out, boom, 140, 150 on her reading. So the rye toast just didn't sit well with her in the morning. And that's the one thing people need to know. You have to play with your foods. And everybody is biochemically very different. And you know, Barbara cannot do well with rye bread in the morning, but she's fine with it at lunchtime. Someone else might need that rye bread in the morning and not at lunchtime. So you really have to be diligent in doing your food logs, which is what she did. And she takes the time to go shopping every week. She takes the time to prepare most of her foods most of the time. She does eat out, but she's really, really taken control of her own health. She's not looking for a doctor to give her a pill, you know, or somebody to fix it for her. And she's very proactive, just like your mother is, I presume, in taking that stance in her health. And it's really hard to do because people are intrinsically very busy and lazy. You know, it's just much easier to take a pill and have somebody fix it, but that doesn't work. It doesn't work for most people most of the time. So she has been very unique in the fact that A, she's really young, and B, she's been very diligent with logging and tracking and trying to help me be her own doctor by figuring out what works for her and what doesn't work for her. And you're eating, what, 6 times a day or 5 times a day on an average? So she does regular feedings. She goes